Red arcs of plasma scorched the void, tracing trails of superheated gas as they slammed into the hulls of enemy ships. Osira 3 burned between them, not a planet, but a war zone choked with debris, mines, and the molten skeletons of cruisers too slow to dodge. Karnvar and Chiral forces tore at each other in a blind fury of territorial dominance, their ships clashing like beasts in heat, no longer tactical, only desperate. A Karnvar Dreadnought detonated from the inside out, its segmented beetle-like frame splitting into concentric rings of fire. On the opposite flank, a Chiral war frigate spiraled into the gravitational wake of a shattered moon, venting corpses and coolant. The battlefield, once a cold void, now boiled with noise, light, and blind hate. And into this chaos drifted something small, unarmed, civilian. The human fleet didn't look like much. 7 ships in total, old freighters refitted for long-range exodus. No weapons, no escorts, just soft light pings announcing their IDs in every known galactic protocol. Human-civilian transport convoy, neutral, refugee-class Alpha. They didn't drift blindly. They threaded a carefully mapped gap between battle vectors, trusting the published trajectories of both superpowers. On board the lead freighter, Andariel, Captain Mark Delaney sat in silence. Grizzled ex-fleet and retired 20 years ago after losing his leg to a decompression accident. He now piloted this bucket of bolts carrying families, children, elders, some born on Earth, some born off it, but all human. His comms officer, Petra Solis, a quiet woman with gray-streaked hair tied back in a military knot, looked up from her console. "They're locking targeting protocols," she said softly, not with fear, with disbelief. Delaney stood. "That can't be right. We've broadcast every clearance. They see our tags. There's nothing here but families." Her eyes flicked down. "Captain, they've classified us as battlefield debris." "Debris?" he echoed, voice cracking. She didn't answer. 4 seconds later, the stars went white. A saturation beam, wide, unfocused, massive, designed not to kill targets, but to erase volumes of space. It carved a corridor through the battlefield, like a god dragging its finger through sand. And where the convoy had been? Silence. The Andariel was the first to vanish, consumed so quickly the sensors didn't register heat signature decay. The second and third ships crumpled like paper under invisible fists of pressure. The last freighter, carrying over 200 civilians, including children from Earth's Martian arcology, split in half before the radiation could even reach its core. No human returned fire. There was no time. The entire massacre lasted under 9 seconds. Surveillance boys recorded everything, the children pressing against viewports, the flashes that came faster than screams, the collapse of life. Their final signals, echoing across relays and drifting satellites, were fragments of lullabies, laughter, and confused questions. The footage reached the galactic comms net in under an hour. The Chiral were first to comment, an unfortunate result of ongoing hostilities. Karnvar followed. Strategic necessities occasionally override diplomatic intentions. Across the galactic web, images flooded the feeds. Civilian ships crumbling into gas, bodies frozen mid-motion, a child's stuffed animal spinning silently in vacuum. Hashtags surged across social forums. Humanity silenced, collateral not forgotten, Osira bleeds. But none from Earth. No statement, no transmission, no diplomat at the Council of 12. For 72 hours, Earth remained still. Embassies locked their doors. Outposts went dark. Civilian colonies, Luna Prime, Titan's Reach, Mars orbitals, all silent. Not even mourning. Just absence. In Drosmir, the heart of galactic diplomacy, the incident was reduced to statistics. Senator Varun, of the Karnvar Inner Council, stood before the Grand Assembly, his plated arms spread in feigned contrition. This is not a declaration of war. It was a tragic convergence of unfortunate factors. The humans chose a path through conflict. No side is to blame. His translator flickered slightly, unable to keep up with the dense throat clicks of his language. His serpentine head pivoted as he scanned the crowd, mostly reptilian, arthropodic, and gelatinous representatives seated behind translucent barriers. Councillor Jakor of the Kiral Confederacy, a creature of translucent muscle and exposed neural cords, chimed in next. If we begin counting dead refugees as acts of aggression, every fleet would drown in reparations. This was a localized failure. Agreement was silent, but present. The humans had been warned, some argued. The war zones were marked. It was regrettable, but hardly criminal. Then, the anomaly. At 0304 Standard Galactic Time, the Drosmir Orbital Control Grid picked up a tremor, not seismic, not artificial, gravitational. A pinpoint shift in space itself, as if something massive were forcing its way through dimensions, dragging localized gravity fields along for the ride. All scanning arrays turned toward it. The anomaly stabilized, then cracked. A void tore open above Drosmir's second moon. Not a wormhole, not a slipstream tunnel. Something different. Something dense enough to bend sensor beams around its event horizon. And from that breach, something emerged. Massive. Silent. Blacker than space itself, with hull plating that rippled like obsidian in motion. No registry codes, no affiliation, no visible propulsion systems. Just a name, burned into its midsection in dull red letters, Jörmungandr. The planetary defense system of Drosmir, an automated wall of 73 orbital cannons, locked on immediately. Then, shut down. Not by choice. They didn't fire. They didn't get to fire. The targeting algorithms failed. Energy cells vented without discharge. Software degraded on the spot, as if something in the incoming ship's signal corrupted core commands by existing. Panic hit command centers like a virus. Scrambling, shouting, emergency transmissions fired toward nearby fleets. A cluster of 4 Karnvar cruisers altered course, fast burning toward the anomaly. The black ship didn't shift. It didn't signal. The cruisers reached weapons range. In 5 seconds, they were gone. No visible discharge. No dramatic energy beams. One simply imploded mid-engine. Another turned sharply, split down its center by something invisible. The third spun, vented atmosphere, and was caught in a kinetic cascade that cracked it open like an egg. The fourth disintegrated mid-acceleration, hull reduced to cinders before it could broadcast a final ping. A fifth ship tried to retreat. A ripple bloomed in space beside it. A pulse, faint, almost beautiful. And the vessel was sliced in half, the rear half continuing for another second before disappearing in a silent explosion. The black ship continued forward. Inside command chambers across the system, the horror began to spread. Not from words, but from stillness. A silence deeper than space. A dread that couldn't be broadcast. Jörmungandr had arrived, and with it, war. The breach didn't close. It pulsed, like something breathing. Jörmungandr drifted out of it as if born from darkness, each meter of its obsidian hull absorbing rather than reflecting light. The ship didn't roar, didn't ignite with energy trails or kinetic bursts. It arrived. No thrusters, no identifiers, just impossible mass, anchored in space, as though it belonged there before space itself knew how to resist. Inside the orbital control tower of Drosmir, systems died one by one. First, the long-range scanners, overloaded, then blind. Then the communication grid, not jammed, just overwritten. Then power relays, redundancies, backup relays. One by one, each node went silent. Technician Arun Voss, a xenoform from the Chalik caste, thin-limbed avian features framed by scaled membrane, turned to his supervisor. His throat pouch quivered, words hesitant. Master Solhan, the reading is not possible. That thing, it feeds on detection. The more we scan it, the less we know. Solhan, a hulking squarry, whose heavy bipedal frame and facial tusks marked him as security elite, clenched his 4-fingered fist. Disable all scans. Pull patrols back. Now. It was already too late. 4 Karnvar cruisers broke formation, veering toward the unidentified vessel. Standard procedure: intercept, hail, identify. Their hulls, sleek and claw-shaped, were built for intimidation. Armored spines, flashing warning glyphs in ultraviolet pulses. They approached cautiously. 50 kilometers, 30, 10. Jormungandr didn't move, didn't respond, didn't acknowledge. It simply watched, as if judging. And then it did. A ripple passed along the forward edge of its hull. Not light, not heat. Something gravitational. Space compressed like wet cloth. The first cruiser was compressed into a singular point, then atomized. Not by explosion, but by removal. As if someone erased it from reality with surgical precision. The second began to pivot in retreat. A lance of invisible force cleaved through it, severing decks and crew before its engines could spool. A plasma bleed ignited its spine, and the remains spiraled like burning leaves. The third and fourth vessels fired, twin streams of high-yield particle lances. Neither shot landed. Jormungandr's surface shimmered, and the beams bent away, arcing into the void and vanishing like water down a drain. Return fire wasn't visible. It didn't need to be. A pulse echoed from the ship's centerline, no brighter than the flicker of a distant star. Both cruisers collapsed. One folded on itself like tinfoil, the other cracked down its keel, atmosphere and bodies spiraling out like blood in zero gravity. The fifth vessel, a Kural strike frigate assigned to monitor Drosmir from orbit, veered away immediately. No weapons, no calls for help. Just escape. It made it 20 kilometers. Then the gravitational spine fired. A single burst, silent, instant, and the ship split down its midline, top half drifting upward like a petal on the breeze, bottom half dropping toward the moon's gravity well, leaking fire. On board the Jormungandr, silence reigned. The bridge was cavernous, no windows, only holographic fields of view. The floor was matte black alloy, no gloss, no design for aesthetics. Everything was engineered for survival and function. The air was cold, recycled, filtered through layers of redundancy. Marshal Raphael Schneider stood at the center. He did not sit in a command chair. He stood, spine rigid, armor matte gray with carbon scoring across the shoulders. No decoration. His face was angular, pale, partially shadowed by the tactical interface suspended before him. Blue light from the holomap flickered across the scar running from temple to chin. He watched the aftermath. Ships breaking apart like they were made of glass. He didn't blink. "Report," he said. Major Lionel Hagen stepped forward, voice clipped, expression locked. "Initial contact complete. 0 human casualties. 5 hostiles neutralized. Defensive return fire effective. No retaliation registered." Hagen's jaw flexed once, no emotion shown, but his fingers curled tightly at his side. His daughter, Elise, had been aboard the Andariel, 19, music student. Her last message had been a recording, a song she wrote during the crossing. He spoke again, like ice cracking. "Awaiting next target vector." Schneider didn't nod. He simply turned to the left, where another figure stood at a console, Commandante Annika Holmgren, tall, shoulders squared, hair pulled into a severe bun beneath her helmet ridge. Her posture was steel. Her eyes had the clarity of someone who had cried all her tears long ago and buried what remained in duty. 2 children lost on the Calypso, the convoy's 3rd freighter. She had identified their remains by dental scan. "Orbital arrays are offline across Drosmir's upper shell," she said. "They tried a wideband distress signal, failed before full packet upload. Passive scans show no immediate reinforcements en route." "Good," Schneider said. No satisfaction, no anger, just confirmation. At the rear of the bridge, Tenente Yannick Bohr tracked telemetry across a wall of green glowing data lines. His eyes were sharp, detached, a surgeon's hands behind the targeting controls. His brother, Milo, had been a logistics officer, civilian, first time off Earth, now vapor. Bohr didn't speak unless ordered. He didn't need to. His work spoke for him. The holomap updated. Waves of interference bloomed outward from the ship's core, a natural side effect of its drive systems. The gravitational wake disrupting comms, sensors, and even visual calibration across enemy fleets. Schneider folded his arms. His voice was low, clear. They took civilians. No one responded. Not a nod, not a word. He looked to Hagen. "Major, sir. You remember your objective?" "Yes, Marshal." He turned to Holmgren. "Containment perimeter? Established. Evasion paths mapped. Atmospheric routes locked. Execute containment. Begin Phase 2. Bohr's hands moved. Outside, beneath the hull, ports slid open with the sound of distant thunder. Drones igniting silently, vanishing toward Drosmir's orbit. Hagen gave the final confirmation. Orders confirmed. Schneider watched the icons vanish from the tactical display. His eyes didn't follow them. They didn't need to. His gaze was locked on the symbol blinking red at the center of the map, Drosmir's planetary capital. When he spoke, it was almost a whisper. "They will understand now." Above Drosmir's lower orbit, 27 ships jumped into position within 7 minutes. Heavy cruisers of the Chiral Confederacy, sleek, elongated constructs with translucent armor and visible energy cores that pulsed like exposed nerves, arrived in irregular formations, some colliding mid-emergence. Their plasma trails sparked chaotically, betraying rushed calculations and panicked launches. Moments later, Karnvar warhulls emerged in bursts of red glare drives, massive, chitin-armored juggernauts resembling spacefaring crustaceans, each bristling with organic protrusions that housed living weapons. Unlike the Chiral, they moved aggressively, forming a jagged half-arc meant to encircle the anomaly. It was not a formation, it was a reaction, a reflex. They didn't understand what they were facing. They just knew it had to be stopped. On board the Jörmungandr, Commandante Holmgren adjusted her tactical display without urgency. Target markers pulsed across her interface in perfect sequence, updating in real time from the ship's central AI. Her voice was steady. 37 confirmed hostiles entering engagement zone. Mixed class. No unified command pattern detected. Major Hagen, at her flank, was already aligning trajectory lines for a sweeping orbital spread. They're panicking, not coordinating. If we split their perimeter at Vector 117, they'll eat themselves. He tapped a series of commands. Recommend cascade fire through belt layers, followed by magnetic inversion. No escape routes. Marshal Schneider didn't need more. Proceed. Jörmungandr shifted forward, slowly, deliberately, its hull dispersing the light around it, a mass so large it warped the battlefield with gravity alone. No visible engines, no exhaust trails, just motion, smooth and quiet. The ship's forward batteries powered in total silence. The descompressor Helion modules fired. Beams of compressed graviton fields lanced out in calculated intervals. Each impact didn't explode. It imploded, pulling hulls inward like they were being consumed from their core. A Karnvar warship, fully shielded, twisted into a spiral of shrieking metal before vanishing into a point of collapsing light. 2 Chiral scouts followed, drawn into the secondary wake without a single warning alarm. Then came the next wave. Jörmungandr pulsed. From the center line of its body, a glow formed. Not light, but absence, a vacuum-shaped ring that expanded in a perfect sphere. The dispersal field activated, a reflected fold magnetic pulse, reversed and amplified by spatial compression. It moved slowly at first, then accelerated into the engagement zone. There was no sound. As the wave touched enemy ships, it didn't tear or explode. It rewrote. Inside a Chiral command vessel, Admiral Kerzen, a tall, translucent being with ribbed musculature and 5 nested vocal channels, screamed as the bridge lighting went black. Circuitry sparked once, then went dead. Control panels flashed error glyphs in dozens of alien dialects. Doors slammed shut. Engines stalled mid-burn. Environmental systems locked. Communications ceased with a mechanical finality, as though language itself had been disabled. Crew stumbled in confusion. Some bled from the nose, others cried out for orders. There were none. Across the Kanvar line, a similar fate spread. A support carrier with a living hull began to rot from inside. The organic control nerves shriveled into crusted membranes, leaving its Kraga pilot cast blind and panicked. One vessel spun uncontrollably as navigation gyros collapsed into raw data noise. Another vented coolant across its hangar bays, where mechs and drones shut down mid-deployment. Nothing exploded. No structures were destroyed, but every ship touched by the wave went dark, dead in orbit, intact, untouched, and completely useless. The wave moved on. Inside Jörmungandr's bridge there was no celebration, only method. Holmgren marked another sequence. Orbital ring neutralized, secondary targets disabled, confirming full blackout across 6 command nodes. Hagen followed up instantly, deploying secondary payloads for clean sweep. Drone pattern Delta 6, full arc. Start at surface orbital line. His voice held no triumph, only rhythm. Rehearsed, efficient, like muscle memory from a drill they had run 1,000 times. On the battlefield, panic bloomed. Galactic news drones circling the system captured it in high resolution. Alien fleets flickering, engines failing, command ships spinning off axis. From the surface of Drosmir, civilians looked up and saw nothing. No lights, no defense lines. Just one ship, a black shape hanging in the sky like a broken moon. In deep orbit, scattered comms from alien vessels bled into open frequencies. We're blind. Everything's down. Shields unresponsive. It's not targeting us. It's dismantling us. Where is the command link? We've lost uplink. Where is the fleet leader? None of them realized it yet. The fleet had no leader. Only fragments. Scrambling officers. Shattered formations built on instinct, not coordination. Back on the Jörmungandr, the final data sync confirmed. Total orbital lockdown, Holmgren said, arms behind her back. We hold airspace from polar ring to equator, 73% of targets inert, remaining forces scattering. Schneider spoke for the first time in minutes. Any response from the Council fleets? Bohr answered from the rear, voice calm. Multiple hails, all frequencies. And? Bohr blinked once. We ignored them. Maintain silence. Outside, the drones returned, sweeping past disabled hulls like silent vultures. No message was delivered. No ultimatum was sent. Only the hum of systems running at full operational efficiency, and the battlefield, left in paralyzed silence, its defenders not dead, but powerless. Humiliation, calibrated by human hands. Inside a broken Karnvar relay ship drifting near Drosmir's upper orbit, a figure moved through the dark, small, insectoid, 6 limbs tucked close to its segmented torso. Its exoskeleton shimmered with camouflage polymer, bending light to mimic the shadows. It crawled across the ceiling of the ruined corridor, bypassing dead terminals and scorched entry hatches. A dermal implant blinked on its neck, pulsing blue as it synced with nearby frequencies. Its designation, Othkir, espionage unit of the Kanvar covert node, Claw Eye. Target, infiltrate the anomaly known as Jörmungandr. Extract information on propulsion, weapons, command structure, transmit, escape. He reached the edge of the ruined hull, magnetic limbs latching to a floating bulkhead. Beyond it, the Black Titan loomed. It didn't appear to move, but gravity itself shifted around it in minute pulses. Its surface was smooth and silent, not a single external node, turret, or hatch. Just endless, seamless metal, broken only by the jagged red letters scorched into its skin. Othkir launched forward. He crossed space in microbursts, invisible to most sensors, sliding under the protective shadow of a drifting wreck to mask his final approach. When his talons touched the hull, his dermal unit sent out the first whisper, A probe packet, testing for open ports, maintenance grids, heat seams. No answer. He initiated a second pulse. It was the last thing he did. A shimmer passed across Jormungandr's surface. Not visible, not even directly detectable. Just a change. A null state field spread outward. Othkir's implants shorted simultaneously. His memory core fried, muscles spasmed. Limbs curled inward like a crushed spider. His corpse tumbled, silently rejected. Across the system, 4 more infiltrators, 1 Chiral, 2 Vaik, 1 of unknown origin, suffered similar fates. None breached Jormungandr's hull, none completed their transmissions. Each was eliminated by an automated perimeter defense that did not defend, it anticipated. Back inside the ship, at the core of the bridge, Marshal Raphael Schneider stood before a tactical display the size of a wall, its interface projected in layers of transparent light. 5 attempts, said Bohr. All neutralized. No signal leakage. No breach signatures. They're getting desperate, Holmgren added from the side console, and sloppy. They should be, Schneider replied flatly. He turned toward the central holotable, where red and white pulses mapped out the enemy's remaining logistics. A click echoed behind him, the door to the war room ceiling. Inside, only the 4 of them remained. Schneider, Major Leonel Hagen, Commandante Annika Holmgren, and Tenente Yannick Bohr. The table lit with a pulse, and the AI projection came online, a rotating column of hard blue light, shaped vaguely like a human spinal cord, bristling with coded glyphs and segmented data rings. It had no name, just a designation, Dios X. It spoke with a neutral, clipped voice. Targets acquired, remaining logistic clusters identified, 3 relay depots, 2 hyperspace fueling rings, 7 comm uplinks. Probability of reinforcement within 36 minutes, 62%. Schneider looked to Hagen. Recommendations? Hagen didn't hesitate. Simultaneous strikes, hit comms first, cripple the data spine, then rupture the fuel rings. Use the Vomega projectiles to pierce through all 3 depots in a single kinetic line. No waste. No survivors. There was something in his voice. Sharp, tensed, contained. Holmgren noticed it too. She turned her head slightly. That's a high-risk sequence. Those depots are deep space fortified. I know, Hagen snapped, then reined himself in. I know. Bohr's eyes flicked between them, but said nothing. Schneider leaned in, tone even. Major, is your decision tactical or emotional? Hagen stared at the map, but his jaw was locked. They killed my daughter, Marshal. This isn't theory. It's war. I agree, Schneider said, which is why emotion can't dictate action. Silence. Then Schneider stepped forward, eyes fixed on Hagen. Vengeance without control is weakness dressed as courage. And I don't lead men who mistake grief for strategy. Hagen's nostrils flared. His shoulders stiffened, not in defiance, but in tension. After a beat, he gave a sharp nod. Understood. Good, Schneider said. Holmgren, adjust the plan. We hit comms and rings as outlined, but we delay the depot strike. Bohr will run a shadow sim to find a breach vector that doesn't rely on brute force. Already processing, Bohr replied. The AI pulsed again. Additional note, enemy logistic formations follow known chiral cascade deployment structures and Canvar fallback fractals. These models were inverted during Jormungander's training phase and stored in predictive matrices. Strategic efficiency optimized. Holmgren spoke without turning. They don't realize they're using tactics we've already broken. That's why we're always a step ahead. Schneider nodded once. We studied them. We learned from them. Now we use their doctrine against them. He gestured at the map. Deploy the drones. Disable the comm uplinks first. No destruction. Just silence. Let them sit in the silence they gave us. Minutes later, across 3 systems, orbiting relay stations flickered off in rapid sequence. In the Narsen corridor, a chiral comm hub choked in silence. Its crystalline broadcast towers dimmed, then deactivated, locking its crew in a tomb of unreadable code. The station's commander, Salvir, clawed at his interface, gurgling through bioluminescent glands. "We're being scrubbed. The system's being rewritten." He never received a reply. On the Karnvar side, a supply ring around the black dwarf Velsoon went dark. Its crew, living organic components nested into bioengineered command chairs, began to dissolve into the nutrient foam meant to sustain them. No alarms, no trauma, just quiet, irreversible system death. Every structure was left intact. The humiliation continued. On Jormungander's bridge, the status display showed clean, controlled disablement of every target. 7 uplinks down, Bohr confirmed. 2 fueling rings inert. No defensive fire, no countermeasure attempts. Schneider stood still, arms behind his back, gaze locked on the holomap. "Begin next phase," he said. The AI acknowledged. Phase 4. Targeting logistical spines. Estimated collapse in 38 minutes. No celebration, no applause. Only silence, deep and deliberate. They weren't there to prove a point. They were there to end one. 12 Karnavar warships exploded at once, their hulls flaring into silent fireballs in the upper orbit of Hadronox Prime. Not from missiles, not from plasma strikes. From perfect, synchronized annihilation. Each ship had been marked by a thread-thin drone, no larger than a suitcase, launched by Jormungander exactly 3 hours prior. They clung to magnetic creases in the enemy armor and waited, dormant, invisible to scans. When the command came, they detonated with surgical precision, each triggering a delayed reactive core implosion from inside. No alarms were raised, no countermeasures fired. By the time the first Karnvar pilot realized what was happening, he was already plasma dust. Across the fleet networks of both superpowers, silence turned to terror. The humans weren't fighting for position. They were executing a pattern. On board the primary command deck of the Kiral carrier Sha'el Voch, Admiral Rezuthankar gripped the edges of his hovering control ring, his iridescent tendrils twitching in panic. His face, stretched taut over 4 mandible plates, flickered with internal biolight as distress signals poured in. "They've bypassed our shields," one of his bridge officers choked. "Those ships were reinforced." Rezuthankar spun. "They are inside our doctrine. They knew the timing of our orbit locks." Nearby, a diplomatic envoy from Karnvar watched with clenched claws, Ambassador Rag Malsoon, his armor adorned with ceremonial tusks, his compound eyes flaring in rage. "This is your fault," he hissed. "You brought this plague to our borders." "Yours fired first," Rezuthankar snapped. "It was your fleet that opened fire in Osira 3. Their voices didn't matter. A mutual realization was already setting in across both commands. The war wasn't between Karnvar and Kiral anymore. It was between all of them, and it. A temporary alliance was formed in less than an hour. Emergency pact, no terms, no negotiation, just a directive. Coordinate everything. Pool fleets. Combine artillery. Stop the human Dreadnought before it reached the trade spines of Drosmir. They never had the chance. Because Jormungander was already there. It drifted into orbit over the Kiral-controlled moon of Delvis, without a sound. Below it, cities flooded with refugees. Shuttles overloaded. Commercial structures powered down. Even the criminals abandoned their dens. In the central district, a massive entertainment tower flickered its final transmission. The image of the ship overhead, casting a shadow so vast it disrupted the weather. People called it the Iron Eclipse. Others called it the God that doesn't speak. These names spread in seconds. On civilian networks, shaky footage of Jormungander became viral data relics. They were passed between hands in underground bunkers, uploaded into memory pools on data dust, broadcast into black market comm-bands. One showed the ship from the surface, not attacking, not speaking, just hovering, its hull swallowing light and will at the same time. Fear became culture, no propaganda, no threats, just footage and silence. On Jormungander's bridge, Tenente Yannick Bohr stood before the central bombardment controls. He said nothing, His hands moved in practiced rhythm, slow, precise, brutal. Each button pressed was a heartbeat. Each sequence programmed was a burial. On the holomap, a red circle blinked over a stationary structure. The Karn-Var orbital command node, Trelsk 41, perched in the shadow of the shattered moon Azduran. That's where Milo had died. His brother, logistics officer, burned alive when the refugee vessel ruptured mid-broadcast, reaching for a help signal that never arrived. Bor's expression was calm, his eyes fixed. "Coordinates locked," he muttered. He selected the payload, 5 Vomega-class kinetic rods. Pure tungsten carbide laced with destabilizing isotope cores, guided not by computers, but by gravitational lensing algorithms designed inside the Jormungandr's AI core. He input the trajectory. No arc, no curve, straight line, surgical. "Confirm fire sequence," came the voice of Commandante Holmgren from behind. Bor pressed the final switch. The rods launched. No light, no trail, just motion. They broke orbit like spears of judgment, and less than 60 seconds later, Trelsk 41 ceased to exist. Not in fire, not in smoke. It simply collapsed inward. Metal folded in upon itself. Pressure sealed bulkheads before crew members could scream. Every system blinked out. It was over before alarms could trigger. Bor watched the impact data roll in. His face never moved. His grief wasn't a wave. It wasn't tears. It was calculation, weight, precision. He showed his sorrow in the way a sniper works, quietly, without tremor. "Target eliminated," he said. Schneider, watching from the bridge's upper deck, said nothing. He didn't need to. All around the ship, data pings surged with fresh activity. Alien colonies were shutting down commerce lines, markets frozen, transit lanes abandoned, ships left half-loaded on docks. Civilian councils issued non-mandatory evacuations with official denials attached, everyone pretending it wasn't fear, but logistical precautions. The truth spread faster than any directive. The humans weren't coming to negotiate. They didn't want tribute, or land, or status. They came because someone killed their own, and now the galaxy would pay in kind. On the outer edge of the Kiral sector, deep within a decommissioned military archive, a viral thread began circulating among the younger caste, a single image extracted from battlefield debris, a drone's final frame showing Jormungandr in partial silhouette, backlit by the burning rings of a gas giant. It was tagged with 2 words in Kiral script: "It watches." The humans didn't answer hails. They didn't respond to pleas. They simply moved. The axis of fear had shifted, and now everyone spun around them. In the central chamber of the Galactic Council on Drosmir, silence had become suffocating. The Great Hall, suspended in geostationary orbit above the planet's northern hemisphere, normally thrummed with diplomatic noise, layered translators humming, species speaking in trinary, binary, pheromonal pulses, radiation bursts, chemical excretions. Now only breath and static. Representatives of 62 star-faring civilizations sat behind layered transparencies of containment shields, ambient moisture filters, and environmental stabilizers. Most looked toward the central projection ring, where a priority broadcast override had just forced its way into the Council's core uplink, an override encoded in a human encryption no alien species had seen used in over 3 decades. The seal of Earth pulsed in silence, then faded, and she appeared. Commandante Annika Holmgren stood tall and motionless in full ceremonial uniform, black from collar to boot, with no rank markings, no medals, no banners. Only the matte plating, edged with carbon gray. Her face, lit by the cold white of the feed, was unreadable. Hard angles, clear eyes, no softness left. Her hair was bound in a knot so tight it appeared fused to her skull. Behind her, the blurred silhouette of a funeral flag drifted in artificial gravity. Black cloth, no symbols, no anthem. She didn't begin with greetings. "Earth acknowledges the existence of hostilities," she said. Her voice was firm, deep, and completely devoid of effect. This is not a declaration. This is a correction. Consider this an adjustment of posture. Many in the chamber shifted uncomfortably. A Scaravi diplomat, a six-limbed arachnid whose carapace glistened with light-absorbing oil, clicked its translator online, ready to object. It didn't get the chance. Holmgren continued. For decades, we chose silence. We honored distance. We stepped away from every territorial conflict, every resource treaty, every opportunity for expansion. We believed silence had strength. She took one slow breath. That belief died with our civilians at Osira 3. Holmgren paused, letting the weight of the words settle into the chamber like ash. We will not demand reparations. We will not submit inquiries. We will not wait for commissions. We have taken our position. Another pause. A faint tremor of static passed across the feed, intentional, controlled. Prepare yourselves. The feed cut. The council chamber erupted. Dozens of delegates surged forward, trying to shout across containment barriers. Some emitted warning pheromones that glowed across the air like blood in water. Others released electromagnetic pulses meant to trigger reaction from defense committees. It was chaos wrapped in protocol. But the humans didn't respond. No clarifications, no follow-ups, no press contacts. They had said what needed to be said, and they had said it in morning black. Back aboard the Jormungandr, the silence after transmission was absolute. Marshal Raphael Schneider stood at the upper deck of the command bridge, arms behind his back, observing the last flickers of the feed being archived by the AI. The bridge lighting was dimmed. Red emergency hues pulsed gently under the floor grating. Below him, the primary crew continued operations in silence. Bohr checked the gravitational distortion monitor. Status stable. No emergent anomalies. Holmgren stepped down from the transmitter dais, still in uniform, still silent. Schneider spoke without looking at her. You did what they wouldn't forget. She nodded once. They won't. Moments later, the proximity alarm chimed, a subtle, pulsing tone, more a warning than a threat. Bohr looked up immediately. Gravitational spike, Sector 6A. Range, 23,000 kilometers, no signature. Cloaked jump. Schneider turned. Visual. A single enemy vessel emerged from the breach, sleek, fang-like, lacking any visible insignia. It shimmered in and out of perception, coated in reflective film. Its engines didn't match any known Chiral or Karnvar design. Black Ops, infiltration class, built for sabotage. It fired nothing, no hails, no beacon. It moved toward the outer hull of the Jormungandr, probing, measuring. Bohr's hands moved across his console. Target lock acquired. Confirm action. Schneider didn't blink. Destroy it. The order was given without emotion. A pulse of gravitational force surged from the underbelly of the Jormungandr, silent, fast, invisible. The enemy ship fractured mid-flight, no explosion, no flame, just disintegration, crushed inward like paper under steel, its core folding in on itself as though space itself rejected its presence. Nothing was left but a stream of spinning metal fragments, caught in the gravity well and trailing behind like shredded foil. Schneider watched the largest piece, half a wing, black and jagged, drift across the external display. They still think we're here to negotiate, he said. They'll understand when there's no one left to answer. No one responded. The silence wasn't emptiness, it was confirmation. There would be no more warnings, no more dialogue, only what came next. 316 ships appeared across the edge of the Jedran expanse, not in waves, in formation, tiered, calculated, gridded into 3 concentric rings of combat saturation. The first was composed of interceptors and fast-moving frigates, clawed, angular, and covered in shielded composite scales. The second ring bristled with medium cruisers and artillery support craft. The third held capital-class dreadnoughts, Chiral constructs of translucent alloy cores and spiraled antenna clusters, Karnvar hive ships pulsing with internal biomass cannons, and 3 VX silencers, blocky matte cubes with no visible engines. At the center of this noose, the Jormungandr. Marshal Raphael Schneider stood at the bridge's central command node, eyes locked on the incoming telemetry. The enemy formation stretched across over 8,000 kilometers of orbital vector, tightening. "They've consolidated," Bohr said, his voice flat. "All command branches synchronized, shared combat AI. They're coming with everything." "Good," Schneider replied. "So are we." He stepped forward. "Bohr, open a corridor." Yannick Bohr tapped a 3-key input, the ship's central gravitic battery charged in complete silence. A distortion wave rippled across the void, invisible to the naked eye, but catastrophic on impact. Ahead of Jormungandr, 12 enemy ships twisted mid-flight as their sensors lost orientation. One collided with another before either could correct. The wave followed. A spine of bent space, folding light and magnetism into a spear point. Ships were pulled apart, not destroyed, unraveled. Internal systems warped, flight commands inverted, shield harmonics flipped. 3 VAX silencers shut down completely, their onboard cores misreading their own energy matrices and initiating emergency self-scuttle. "Corridor cleared," Bohr confirmed. Schneider didn't break stride. "Holmgren, deep strike." Commandante Holmgren pivoted from her post, releasing drone net. From beneath the Jormungandr's hull, thousands of impact pods jettisoned like silent flares. Each one opened mid-flight, deploying a trio of atmospheric assault drones, sleek, spiked, silent machines designed not to engage targets, but to erase infrastructure. They weaved through the second ring before alarms triggered. On the Chiral Dreadnought Vrohanselek, General Isturval flared with light across his 4 cranial ridges. "What are those?" "Intercept. Launch interceptors now." No response. His communications officers were frozen, not by fear, but by systems that refused to process commands. Every request triggered a recursive loop. Every sensor returned false data. The drones didn't jam signals, they deconstructed logic. "Too late," one officer muttered before her panel died. Jormungandr was now inside the first ring. It didn't bank. It didn't maneuver. It drove forward like a cosmic blade, splitting enemy formations with clinical indifference. Everything around it bent, either to accommodate its passage or to be crushed by it. "Major Hagen," Schneider called, eyes still forward. "No survivors." Lionel Hagen, seated at the tactical fire control module, narrowed his gaze. "Understood." He keyed in the sequence for simultaneous saturation. Helium decompressors, Vomaga rods, and dual impact swarms. All systems green, all channels locked. He fired. Across the second ring, 39 ships erupted in staggered delay. Not from external explosion, from internal reaction. One Chiral cruiser simply imploded, its reactors failsafes overwritten by a logic spike encoded in human code. A Karnvar hive ship curled mid-maneuver as its flesh coating began to slough off. Its biomass systems were fed a synthetic protein signal, something that mimicked its own neural impulses. It choked on itself. Another ship fired at its own wingmate, no longer discerning friend from foe. Panic followed, then fire. The second ring disintegrated. "Systems falling apart," Bohr said, scanning the updates. "Enemy comms locked in local loops. Their own AI can't parse our pattern. They're feeding on corrupted input. Collapse is self-inflicted," Holmgren added. "We're simply walking through the failure." The third ring started to buckle before the first shot. Dreadnoughts repositioned, some breaking rank. Orders to regroup were issued from alien command vessels, but the instructions arrived corrupted. Words swapped. Coordinates scrambled. The logic inversion pattern Jormungandr had deployed wasn't interference. It was replication, turning their own command structure against them. "They're retreating," Bohr said, "but not fast enough." On enemy channels, fleet commanders screamed, orders to scatter, to retreat into slip space, to jump anywhere but here. But their drives began to overheat, unable to align through distorted gravitational fields. "Engagement vector holding," Holmgren said, tone exact. "They don't know what part of their fleet is real anymore." Below, on Jormungander's decks, weapon systems rotated without pause. No warnings, no sound, no heat. It moved like gravity wearing armor, crushing everything in its path without touching it. Ships began to crash into one another as they fled. Some were pulled into Jormungander's wake and crushed like trash in orbital decay. Others blinked out mid-jump, their navigational cores force-fed false star maps. One final Kanvar Dreadnought attempted to turn its hull toward Jormungander's bow, not to fight, but to shield a cluster of retreating ships behind it. The ship never fired. It was hit by 3 Vomega projectiles from beneath, sheared from bottom to top in silence. Schneider watched the debris spiral past the viewport. No celebration, no movement, only confirmation. Bohr looked up. Their command beacon just went dark. "They've lost cohesion," Holmgren added. "It's over." Schneider gave one final nod. "Advance," he said. And Jormungander pushed through the final line. No evasive patterns, no breaks, straight. Everything before it fell, everything behind it burned, and nothing stood in its way. The enemy had nothing left but formation. What was once a grand alliance, Karnvar spine ships, Kiral crystalline dreadnoughts, Vik disruptor cubes, and mercenary constructs from fringe systems, now clustered in a desperate crescent across the core of the Kaveri system. Their weapons still fired, their drives still hummed, but coordination was gone. Communications scrambled, logic cores overwritten, and automated systems fed corrupted orders that contradicted themselves mid-execution. They were trying to regroup, trying to make a stand. From the bridge of the Jormungander, Marshal Raphael Schneider stood motionless, eyes locked on the main visor. Data flickered across the holographic panels, heat spikes, trajectory plots, malfunction alerts from enemy vessels. Red arcs swam through the enemy ranks, each representing a ship turning not to fire, but to flee. Schneider didn't blink. "Final line is collapsing," Bohr said from below, fingers dancing across the interface. "They're drawing ships inward around a single coordinate cluster, Command Core." Hagen leaned forward at the tactical array, voice controlled, almost solemn. "The Nexus node. They're centralizing control. One hub, full override." "Desperation," Holmgren added. "They've abandoned lateral logic trees. One brain to run everything. If we cut that, everything folds." "Their betting will slow down," Bohr said. Schneider stepped forward, shoulders squared. "We won't." He turned his head slightly. "Target, enemy command nucleus, route, direct." Bohr confirmed without pause. "Trajectory locked." Hagen, "Weapon systems hot." Holmgren, "Shields harmonized, drones in recon silence, all systems aligned." Schneider gave a single nod. "Execute." The Jormungander accelerated. Not by degrees, not by momentum. It surged. The forward hull trembled, not from strain but from restraint, as energy channels flooded and released in seamless cycles. No evasive maneuvers, no angular corrections. It charged through the cloud of enemy ships like a celestial javelin, burning straight through the heart of the storm. Missiles detonated around it in chaotic intervals. Particle beams danced across its shield skin and died without denting it. Kinetic slugs struck, but failed to register as impacts. The ship's gravitic veil simply bent their path, redirecting them into debris fields or back into the fleets that fired them. Jormungander did not waver. Enemy vessels panicked. A Vayak command cube spun and clipped a Chiral cruiser, sending both into an uncontrolled tumble. 2 Karnvar gunships crossed flight paths in retreat and were vaporized by their own pulse lines. In the center of the chaos, the command hub came into view, a massive spherical vessel lined with interlinked sensor towers and armored relay spines, surrounded by 6 Guardian craft, each one pumping out thousands of micro-decoys and flares in a desperate bid to obscure the core. Jormungandr's response was silent. 3 projectiles emerged from its undercarriage, black rods that glowed faintly at the edges, moving so fast they blurred the sensors tracking them. They tore through the first line of defenders, carving through hulls like wet parchment. One spun off course, redirected by enemy ECM, but it didn't matter. The other 2 found home. The first rod struck the defensive relay ring, severing its gravitational anchor. The entire outer ring of the command core rotated out of sync, throwing internal systems into power loss. The second buried itself into the command sphere and detonated, not with fire but with a pulse, one that fractured every data stream, every node, every synapse in the alien architecture. The enemy's lights flickered. Ships halted mid-flight. Some stopped cold. Others fired at nothing. One Vayek destroyer began a return sequence to a non-existent homeworld. A Chiral battleship began venting internal coolant directly into its crew quarters, misreading the heat signatures of its own staff as threats. The network collapsed. Schneider's face remained still. "Fire core," he ordered. Bohr triggered the sequence. Beneath the Jormungandr, the core reactor opened, not exposed but channeled. A precise injection of energy funneled through a weapon rail, built not to pierce, but to erase. The shot left no light trail, just the absence of it. It struck the central command sphere with mathematical cruelty. The outer hull folded, the spines collapsed. The internal fusion lattice, already destabilized, imploded in on itself before releasing everything in one final silent scream of gravity and mass. The blast didn't radiate. It consumed. At first, it appeared as a singularity flare, then as a cascading bloom of raw destruction expanding in all directions, peeling the system's center apart like burning paper. Ships caught in its radius were shredded into molecular ash before their crew could register the impact. From the outer edges of the Kavari system, the explosion bloomed into visibility, a radiant, circular ring of molten debris spinning around a hollow void. A crown of fire. A coronation, not of a victor, but of the end. Inside the Jormungandr, lights dimmed as energy rebalanced. Smoke hissed from one of the overhead conduits. Sparks popped from an auxiliary panel. Schneider stood in the smoke, unmoving. His armor was scorched, charred black along the left arm and shoulder, heat-scarred across the chest plate. A long line of soot streaked down from his collarbone. His hair was damp with sweat and smoke, but his expression was unchanged. A camera drone, floating in stabilized orbit just outside the ship, activated its final relay, transmitting a closing image across all known galactic networks. The feed stabilized. Schneider stood before it, armor cracked and burned, ash drifting around him like snow. His eyes were calm, focused, unflinching. He said nothing at first. The silence held like a knife. Then his voice, deep and final. "If you want peace..." He paused. The smoke cleared behind him, revealing the fading glow of the fire ring in the black. "Prepare for war." The transmission ended. "Hey, you're still here. That's awesome. Hope you had a great time with the story. Remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. It really makes a huge difference to the channel. And hey, I've got something else for you. I've chosen another story that I think you'll really enjoy. Just click the card right here, or hit this one to jump into the full playlist. See you in the next one.